Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Chin, and I'm the author of the new book, Circus Folk, which is available from Hoot and Waddle Press now. I'm recording this video to help celebrate and promote the release of the book, but also to introduce you all to some of my writer friends who are kind enough to record videos as part of this project and celebrate with me. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the first one. Zoe Bossier is a PhD candidate at Ohio University, where she studies creative writing and rhetoric and composition. She is the managing editor of Brevity and the co-editor of its upcoming anthology, The Best of Brevity, 20 Groundbreaking Years of Flash Nonfiction from Rose Metal Press, coming out in 2020. Visit her online at zoebossier.com.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here for this virtual reading, and congratulations to Mike Chen on his latest collection of stories, Circus Folk, which is out now. My name is Zoe Bossier, and tonight I'm going to be sticking with the circus theme and reading from my memoir in progress, which is called Circus Land. The premise of the memoir is about my parents, who were sea lion trainers in the Hungarian circus in 1984. And it's also about the sort of growing up in the aftermath of that event. So behind me, actually, I have a poster from my parents' circus tour. So it's got pictures of all of the different acts that were in their circus, including the sea lions here. And so I'm just going to be reading a short excerpt from the first chapter of the memoir. As a child, Hungary was an abstraction to me, a place with a funny name where my parents did this amazing, ephemeral thing that would become central to our identity as a family. Hungary was the motherland, the Mecca, the holy circus ring, the origin of my bedtime stories, and the source of a lingering, displaced sense of nostalgia for both a time and a country I've never known. I spent countless hours preparing for this moment, reading my father's old letters home, perusing my mother's collected scrapbook ephemera, and studying the many pictures they took on the road that summer in '84, though I'd always suspected these documents were a pale substitute for the reality of the circus. I never thought the experience of visiting the place I'd heard about all my life could be so validating or so visceral. I am finally standing here in Budapest, among the babushka grandmothers resting their weary bones on benches, watching as gaggles of tourists wander by, among the old men with balding heads and hairy ears congregating outside the Széchenyi bathhouse for a cigar before their soak. The mob of children waiting impatiently in line for the Budapest Zoo, where I swear I can hear the occasional trumpeting of elephants behind the wall it shares with the circus. I will myself to take a mental picture of this day, these people, this place, at once so familiar to me and also unlike anything I could have previously imagined. I take a breath, allowing these feelings to wash over me, reminding myself that the memories here belong not to me, but to the 3 members of my immediate family, all of whom are standing in front of me, talking to the clown who welcomed them to the first place in Hungary they called home. Looks just like it used to, doesn't it? My mother says. My father nods, sliding a hand over her shoulder. My sister, Jessica, stands near them with her arms folded, staring off like she does when she's lost in thought. All 3 are unusually quiet, each perhaps reminiscing about their first day in the city when they stepped off the train at the railway station and into their new lives as circus people. The Fovorosi Nej Circus, or the Capital Circus of Budapest as it's known in English, was built in 1889 and has since survived 2 world wars, a socialist state, several changes of ownership, and countless circus acts like my parents. The building itself hasn't changed much since my family's circus days, though back then Hungary was still part of the communist Eastern Bloc, and in the washed-out '84 picture my father took, the circus looked strictly utilitarian, the color and personality of unmixed concrete. A person could easily mistake it for a picture of an office building or a government facility if not for the cartoon clown posted on the roof. We peek through darkened windows to see the ticket booths and the grand entrance. The concession stand is stocked with boxes of colorful Hungarian candies, neatly stacked cans of soda pop, and a gleaming popcorn machine. We try a few of the front doors, but they're locked, and nobody seems to be around. So instead, we stand at the gate leading into the parking lot, pressing our faces between its bars, realizing this may be as close to the circus as we're going to get, at least for today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. Our next reader is Lacey Rowland, whose work has appeared in Pleiades, Hobart, Cutbank, and elsewhere. In addition, she's been listed in Glimmer Train's Emerging Writers Top 25 and a finalist for Montana Book Festival's Emerging Writers Contest. She was recently named a June Dodge Fellow at the Mineral School, and she received her MFA in fiction from Oregon State University and is currently working on her PhD in English at the University of Missouri. So here's Lacey.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Mike. Thanks so much for inviting me to be a part of your virtual release party for your new book, Circus Folk. Pretty awesome. I'm so pumped. I've been honored to be a part of Mike's life for a few years now and been so privileged to read his work. So this is like the biggest thrill for me. So I'm going to read a couple short pieces that I'm calling exhibits from an ongoing project that I'm working on called Self-Guided Tours. Here we go. Self-Guided Tour, Exhibit Number 9, from the National Museum of Broken Marriages. A medium says to channel the late wife through beloved objects. I press my ear to a mug, a journal, my husband's chest. All I hear is the ocean. I have so much to ask you, I say to a pair of slinky thigh-high boots. In a basement, she is a star dying. Objects speaking to me in ways I don't understand. I turn on the vacuum and listen to it hum. It is saying, I was robbed of everything I've ever loved, or maybe it's saying, I miss England, or it's saying nothing at all. My husband unplugs the vacuum from the wall to tell me he's home. Exhibit number 21. I've been developing a theory of the afterlife. The late wife stands beside me as I add seasoning to dinner. She shakes her head, clicks her tongue. My husband thinks the idea is absurd, that heaven and hell exist on earth in another dimensional plane. I ask, do you really think our souls float to the sky? He shrugs. The late wife stirs the simmering pot before it boils over, turns the burner to low. My husband dips his finger into the sauce. Too much salt. Exhibit 114. A. On our honeymoon, we visit a monastery atop a mountain in Spain. The late wife joins us. She hasn't gotten out of the house much. We stand in line before a statue of the Virgin Mary holding Christ in her lap and an orb in her palm. My husband makes a joke, something about new moms always having their hands full. We wait in line for nearly an hour to touch the orb for a second, maybe two. I arrive at the feet of the Virgin Mary. She's caged in safety glass smudged with fingerprints. I reach for the orb through a hole in the wall. B. Count Karl von Kossel, a bacteriologist, lived with a dead woman. She'd been a patient of his, and when she died, he could not let her go. He took her body from her mausoleum and carted her in a toy wagon back to his home. As her body decayed, he encased her in wax and plaster, made a wig for her out of her own hair that fell from her scalp as it deteriorated. She was falling to pieces, and he tried to keep her together. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Lacey. Our next reader is Allison Layfield, who is a poetry editor for the feminist poetry journal Bone Bouquet, available at bonebouquet.org. Her work has been published in Delirious Hem, New Delta Review, and Linger Post. Her current work focuses on cosmic violence and fairy tales. So here's Allison.
How to build a heroine. When you make your heroine, save room for rebellious hair and sneaky attitude creeping into your pores. She must have at least one secret lover, no rape incidents. This will significantly narrow your possibilities. Your perfect heroine is flawed, perhaps a princess from Belgium who locks herself in a closet with 300 pairs of shoes. She should be structurally sound, built from bones of badass. She reminds you of your grandmother, the one who drinks too much, or still smokes cigarettes, or decides she's too old not to carpet the entire house in purple. You have one of these. Start obsessively tracking her life. Maybe when she was young, some sailor husband gave her syphilis. She became obsessive compulsive, but got over it by carrying her hairdryer everywhere. Your perfect heroine should have an easy enemy, identifiably evil, girl-hating. This will give you a place for stomping. Give her a defense weapon. Make it phallic. Make it ridiculous. Make her enemy a monster, but her shoes comfortable and tall as towers. Make her fatal flaw a quick tongue, a locked knee, double-jointed elbows so she can slap someone standing behind her while she calls out her enemy. She is related to somebody, and she changes this person's mind about healthcare. She is not married, or maybe she is married to a woman who knows where Kitsch lives, or maybe she is married to a man who gambles recklessly, but always wins. Maybe she is love, and the creature slipping out after has your eyes, down to the freckle in the whites. Don't worry about bumping into railings or furniture. Don't worry that she'll decide to get out of the business of saving. She won't.
All right, our next reader is Stephen Moore. Stephen Moore earned a BA in English from the University of Iowa in 2010 and an MFA in Creative Nonfiction from Oregon State University in 2016. His debut book, The Longer We Were There, a memoir of a part-time soldier from the University of Georgia Press, 2019, won the 2018 AWP Award for Creative Nonfiction and tells the story of the author's 7 years of service as an infantryman in the Iowa Army National Guard, from enlisting at 17 to training during college to deploying on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. His nonfiction has appeared in Kenyon Review Online, The Georgia Review, Ninth Letter, Entropy, War, Literature, and the Arts, North American Review, Southeast Review, Diagram, and is forthcoming in the anthology Why We Write, Craft Essays on Writing War from Middle West Press. He's a contributing editor at Moss, a journal of the Pacific Northwest, and currently resides in Corvallis, Oregon. So here's Stephen.
Hello, everyone, and congratulations to Mike on the book launch. I am going to read from my memoir, The Longer We Were There. This chapter is called Education. I sat at the desk in my new dorm room with one bare foot crossed over my thigh, sawing a torn blister off the bottom of my foot with a pocket knife, then piling the dead skin on my desk. I sawed off the next blister, the next white patch of dry, crusted skin, and the next, then added them to the pile of dead skin. I had this really nice pile going. It was move-in day of college. I was 18, living in Stanley Hall at the University of Iowa. I had just finished unpacking. I had shelved my books and movies alphabetically, set up my computer, plugged in the television, tucked in the sheets and covers on my bunk bed. With the bedding, I had a decision to make about the corners, tuck them in at respectable 45-degree angles, hospital corners, or simply jam the blankets under the mattress. I thought a while and decided on a compromise. I made the hospital corners, but I made them loose, so the bed didn't look aggressively neat, just regular neat. I kept the door to my room propped open, because that seemed to be the fashion. Really, I kept the door open because I was performing something. I was an E2 private in the Iowa National Guard, and about 30 hours prior, I had graduated from the Army's 6-week infantry course at Fort Benning, Georgia. There, a cadre of loud, muscular, veiny men had spent the summer persuading me to the idea that not only was I able and willing to kill other human beings, but further, that I was good at it. Now I was persuaded to this idea. I had this steady and potent feeling of being truly capable, but in a broader sense than knowing how to shoot a rifle, like I was capable of doing anything. Like any problem I encountered here in civilian life would be easy relative to the ones at training. But there was also something off about that feeling, something tremendously bizarre, that I was here, suddenly, at this polite university to study books no one reads except students at polite universities, to learn words like hermeneutics and simulacrum, just so I could use them in formal essays explaining what the books meant. It felt strange, And I wanted to communicate that somehow. I wanted to show people the strangeness because they couldn't know just by looking. This wasn't my hometown where people knew me, so I had to perform it. And since the bottoms of my feet were torn up from the long ruck marches, I took off my socks and began cutting away the dead skin, piling it on my desk with the door open. After a few minutes, someone knocked and stepped in. He wore a white V-neck t-shirt and faux distressed jeans. He was narrow and scruffy and apparently couldn't stand up straight. "I'm Paul," he said, shrugging his little shoulders. "I live down the hall. Just wanted to say hi, or whatever." I stopped, hacking skin off my foot for a second. "Cool. Hi, I'm Steve." He stared at the pile on my desk. "What are you doing?" Thank you so much.
Okay, and last up we have Dahlia Cerusi. Dahlia Cerusi's poetry and prose have appeared in various publications, including the North American Review, the Normal School Online, the Portland Mercury, and most recently in the Springer textbook, Coastal Heritage and Cultural Resiliency. Her chapbook, What I Know, was published by Finishing Line Press. Dahlia earned her MFA from Oregon State University. She now continues her exploration of the healing power of narrative in University of Oregon's Masters in Couples and Family Therapy program. So here's Dahlia.
What I learned about Billy on a 1-hour date during which he asked me 0 questions. Billy loves pizza. Billy loves urban foraging. Billy has an app for urban foraging. Billy was born and raised in Westland, Oregon. His full name is William James Brady. Billy has one brother named Tommy, full name Thomas Edward Brady. When they were kids, Billy's brother Tommy went by Timmy. Billy and Tommy, formerly Timmy, grew up in a house with a huge tricolor beech tree. The tree is owned by the city, and the city takes care of the tree. Billy and Tommy are tight. They went through a lot of shit together growing up, but barely see each other now because Tommy works nights at Olive Garden and Billy works at an after-school program at the Y. Billy's dad's side of the family lives mostly in Oregon with a couple folks in Washington. Billy's mom's side lives in Florida and Michigan. Billy has 14 cousins, including Holly, Nick, and Mike. 8 of the 14 cousins live in Oregon. Billy used to live in the Hollywood district in Portland. He friggin' loved it, but got evicted when his landlord decided to move back into the property. Billy's so pissed because the landlord called a freaking meeting to tell them. Billy wishes he had just texted. Billy really likes swings. Do I want to go find some swings? Billy has a degree in economics from the University of Oregon. One time he took a politics of economics class and Billy talked the whole time. Billy also has a master's in education. Billy specialized in project-based social studies pedagogy. Now Billy is applying for a master's in teaching because he wants to teach middle school math. Billy took the entrance exam but bombed, so he's going to study for like a week and take it again. Billy needs to refresh himself on all those math symbols. Billy wants me to know that math is taught differently now. Billy says kids learn multiplication using shapes. Billy has 3 roommates, 2 of whom moved out. They shared the basement, but they're not a couple. Billy wants me to know that they're not gay. Billy has not met the new roommates yet because they're moving from Texas. They have a husky, and Billy says it'll be nice to have some dog energy around. Billy doesn't give high fives. Billy gives elbows. Most of the kids Billy supervises at the Y are K through 3, with a handful of 4th and 5th graders who he says mostly entertain themselves or sometimes run circle time for the other kids, though they just tell the same jokes over and over again. This week, Billy played Monopoly with 2 3rd graders. One of them wanted to arrange all of her money in neat piles before the game started, but Billy said, "Just do it while we play," and took his turn. This really upset her. Yesterday, Billy had the kids build bridges out of popsicle sticks. They used a ton of hot glue, and get this, not one kid got burned. Billy jammed his left pinky playing handball a week ago. It's still pretty swollen, though Billy admits he has not been elevating it much. Billy has had luck with online dating and notes the influx of new people during the months of August and September. Billy said that one time he went to Michigan and there were surprisingly few singles. Billy says his hot chocolate was pretty good. But Billy says it was definitely not worth $3.
Okay, so to finish up this virtual release party, I'm going to read a short piece from the actual Circus Folk book. This is a flash piece that was originally published in Spry. It's called Contortions. For all the smoke and mirrors of a circus, there are some true talents. See the contortionist bend her body in half, crease the wrong way, farther than you'd ever imagine the human spine could collapse. It looks like it would hurt. There's no faking that. She performs under the name Brenda, but those who know her well understand that was actually her sister's name. The contortionist only started to learn her craft after Brenda took ill. That first bend, less art than experiment, saw the contortionist fold a calf over behind her neck. She didn't get it on the first try, but while her parents were off for a series of doctor's appointments, first in town, then out of town, then overnight, the contortionist had nothing but time to practice. She resented Brenda then. Brenda was bedridden when she got home. While the contortionist didn't appreciate having to take her sister's turn over and over at washing dishes and cleaning the bathroom, it was hard not to pity Brenda. She grew pale past white, skin translucent enough to see purple underneath, skinnier by the day, and not in a flattering way. Because she'd always been rail thin. Now she looked frail, breakable. The first lesson in contortionism is to understand the body won't break, to trust it will bend, as long as you add pressure by measured degrees, as long as you stretch, as long as you practice. The contortionist put both legs behind her head and walked on her hands. It made Brenda laugh. The contortionist walked, bent forward, head between her ankles, so that it was difficult to process whether she were walking forward or backward. Brenda looked on from sunken eye sockets with something like awe. Brenda had lost her hair by the time the contortionist got her hands on a straitjacket. Brenda was restricted to communication by writing on a steno pad, and she was weak enough to struggle with tearing off pages, hardly strong enough to manage the pen in her fingers. The contortionist asked how she was doing. Brenda wrote, "Trapped." So the contortionist shifted gears. Brenda was no longer the audience she prepared to perform in front of, but her co-conspirator in plotting her act. Brenda wrote her own theories about how to slip the straitjacket, or sometimes simple encouragement like when the contortionist cried to keep going. The contortionist owes her career to Brenda. She'll offer that much to the newspaper reporters who drop in on the circus town to town. Contortionism may have remained an idle interest were it not for the prospect of sisters disappearing together. Case in point, the contortionist act always ends the same way. She folds herself into a box that seems too small to contain a life. That's the last any audience sees of her, pulling the lid shut beneath the spotlight, wrapping herself in darkness before the stagehands carry her away. Okay. So again, that was Contortions. Again, that's from my new book, Circus Folk, available now from Hoot and Waddle Press. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you'll consider getting your hands on a copy of the book. Thank you to everyone who helped out in recording this. Again, to my friends, Lacey, Allison, Dahlia, Stephen, who am I forgetting? Gosh, Zoe, I'm sorry. So thank you all so much for sharing those videos with us and your tremendous work in supporting this book. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.
Jono Jadin, Jono Jadin, Jono Jadin. All against me. Ember mind.